Welcome to Wandering Scribe. This is a recap of my House of Horrors. Disclaimer. All rights belong to the original authors and publishers. Only the narration and production are my own. Enjoy the story. Chapter 1. In the quiet shadows of western Zhejiang, a fading haunted house clung to its last breath. Its visitors, teenagers on bikes, laughed as they left, mocking the fake scares and flimsy props. To them, ghosts were just tales, and the haunted house was a joke. Chen Ge, the tired owner, stood silently nearby, clutching a stack of flyers no one wanted. This was once his family's legacy. Now, it was crumbling around him. A young woman in zombie makeup stormed out, Suwan, one of the part-time actors. She'd been harassed by guests. Though she defended herself, it was yet another nail in the coffin. Moments later, she handed over 2 resignation letters. More actors quitting. The staff was dwindling, and so was the hope. 6 months ago, Chen Ge's parents vanished without explanation. All they left behind was the haunted house. He gave up everything to preserve it, out of love, or maybe guilt. But lately, even that devotion was no longer enough. The park manager arrived. Rent was overdue. Utilities unpaid. Though sympathetic, the man warned that the haunted house wouldn't last much longer. Chen Ge knew it too. But letting go meant letting go of the last trace of his parents. That night, alone, Chen Ge wandered through the attraction. Dusty corridors. Broken props. Puppets in disrepair. He muttered about slanted hallways and missing light bulbs. To outsiders, it was all make-believe. But to Chen Ge, every creak in the wall carried memories of childhood spent backstage, of building fake monsters while real life loomed large. In the attic, buried under forgotten materials, he found a wooden box. Inside, a ragged doll he'd made as a child, and a black phone, silent for half a year. It had been discovered at the abandoned hospital where his parents vanished. He never could get it to turn on. Until now. Without warning, the screen flickered to life. A single app appeared. Its icon mirrored the haunted house's entrance. Curious, Chen Ge tapped it. A message appeared. Do you believe there are ghosts in this world? His answer, murmured more to himself than the screen, seemed to awaken something. Another message appeared on the screen. From this moment, you are the new owner of the haunted house. Do not give up. Try to survive. Then the interface unfolded like a game. A rundown haunted house. No reputation. No monsters. Barely any guests. A few tired set pieces and strange, unlockable scenarios, stories about midnight horrors, cursed hospitals, and haunted hearses. Missions. Expansion conditions. Even a twisted wheel of misfortune. It felt unreal. But Chen Ge didn't laugh. Something had changed. The phone pulsed with an eerie presence, like it had been waiting, watching, and now, finally, had chosen him. And deep down, he knew, this was only the beginning. Chapter 2. The app resembled a typical mobile management game, but instead of building a zoo or hotel, the goal was to run a haunted house. Chen Ge couldn't look away. This app was on the phone left behind by his missing parents, but the eerie part? The data matched his real haunted house exactly. Same layout, same daily visitors, same failing reputation. The more he explored the app, the stronger the feeling grew. What happened in the game might influence the real world. Inside, his current scenarios were rated terribly. Even Minghun, which once made headlines, barely scored half a star. The rest were locked, and could only be unlocked by completing daily missions. 3 options appeared. Easy mission, write backstories for the current scenarios. Normal mission, repair all mannequins before midnight. Nightmare mission, I know you're still not wholly convinced about the existence of ghosts in the world. In that case, how about a little game? The truth will be revealed when you open your eyes. Only 1 mission could be chosen per day. The app warned, greater difficulty brings greater danger. Curious and cautious, Chen Ge chose the normal mission. Tools in hand, he wandered his dark, silent haunted house, corridors pitch black to save electricity, flashlight clutched beneath his chin, mannequins looming like silent witnesses. With each step, the silence pressed closer. He worked quickly, repairing each mannequin, shadows dancing around him. It wasn't fear that slowed him, it was the strange sensation that something was watching. At 11:45 p.m., the mission was marked complete. The reward? A digital CD labeled Black Friday. The name triggered a memory, a disturbing urban legend about a song so unsettling, it was said to drive people to madness. Curiosity overrode caution. Chen Ge tapped the icon. Music poured out, not ordinary music, but something laced with sorrow, loneliness, darkness. The wall seemed to vanish. He found himself standing in an endless hallway, the world hollowed out around him. When the final note faded, he was back, but drenched in cold sweat. His hands trembled. He saved the track and backed away from the app. He tried to rest, but sleep never came. Too much had happened. Too much felt wrong. Then the phone lit up. Midnight. New missions had arrived. Easy mission, install surveillance to monitor guests. Normal mission, recruit new staff. Nightmare mission, I know you're still not wholly convinced about the existence of ghosts in the world, in that case, how about a little game? The truth will be revealed when you open your eyes. But Chen Ge had no money for surveillance. And no staff to hire, his team had quit. Which left only one choice. He stared at the screen. The app pulsed faintly. The nightmare mission was waiting. And this time, he was ready to see what lay behind the veil. Chapter 3. The nightmare mission had always loomed like a dare. Its cryptic prompt whispered a promise, open your eyes, and the truth will follow. Chen Ge couldn't resist. He had no staff, no funds, and time was slipping through his fingers. The haunted house wouldn't survive the season unless something changed. And this strange app, found on the phone left by his missing parents, might be his only way out. So, he accepted the nightmare mission. The real task soon revealed itself. A ritual. A game called Another You in the Mirror. Simple, yet chilling instructions followed. Enter a bathroom alone at 2:04 a.m., turn off the lights, light a candle between yourself and the mirror, and chant your name with your eyes closed for 30 minutes. No matter what happens, no matter what you hear or feel, do not open your eyes. Chen Ge had read about the game on online forum, urban legends, vanishing people, tales of doppelgangers and cursed mirrors. But he wasn't afraid. In fact, he was intrigued. As a haunted house operator, this was exactly the kind of real-life fear that could become a masterpiece attraction. He planned to record everything, hoping it might serve as inspiration or proof. By 2 a.m., the haunted house was dead silent. He'd chosen the downstairs bathroom specifically, small, with a window he could escape through if things went wrong. The cold porcelain, the mirror, the creaking pipes, it was a stage designed for fear. Chen Ge placed his phone beside the cistern, the camera fixed on the mirror. The time ticked toward 2:04. He switched off his flashlight and lit the candle. Darkness swallowed the room. The flickering flame cast shadows that danced between realities. Chen Ge stared at his reflection until it felt off. Then, he closed his eyes and began to chant his name. Chen Ge. Chen Ge. He spaced each chant, using it as a countdown to survive the half hour. The mind plays tricks in silence. Fear doesn't need apparitions, it thrives on the unknown. Shadows grew longer behind his eyelids. His name, repeated enough times, began to sound foreign. Was he still real? Was he the one in the mirror? 10 minutes passed. And then, something moved. A chill swept the room, and the air thickened. But Chen Ge remained still, his eyes shut. Just as the instructions demanded. He had entered the game. And something had entered the room. Chapter 4. The toilet felt colder as a draft swept through the room, brushing past Chen Ge's face like an invisible hand. The door creaked, the water at the ceiling's corner dripped. And the insects scattered across the floor, their movements making Chen Ge's skin crawl. In the oppressive silence, his nerves would have rattled anyone else, but Chen Ge had always been calm under pressure. His thoughts focused solely on the passing minutes. He had been standing still for 20 minutes now, but something was wrong. The air grew colder, unnaturally so, like ice was encasing him. "Don't overthink it," he whispered to himself, gripping his hands tight, his veins bulging. But his body remained frozen. The candle flickered. Then, a voice. "Chen Ge." The whisper seemed to come from the dark, an urgent call. Chen Ge knew he couldn't look away or move. He was trapped in this ritual. The voice outside the door grew louder, but he refused to let it distract him. The final 3 minutes were filled with scratching noises against the door, nails scraping across the wood. Tick. Tock. The seconds crawled by. Finally, the time was up. Silence descended like a heavy fog. Chen Ge waited, counting an extra 3 minutes to be sure. When he opened his eyes, the world seemed wrong. The candle had gone out, and the mirror before him was cracked, distorted reflections of himself staring back. But what truly chilled him was the doll. It sat, leaning against the mirror, its button eyes staring at him in the dark. The very same doll he had made years ago, before his parents disappeared. Confused and unnerved, he approached it cautiously. The doll was still, but its eyes, they seemed to follow him. A growing dread settled in his stomach. The mirror had shown something unnatural. He pulled out his phone and replayed the recording. The video revealed disturbing details. As he stood with eyes closed, his reflection moved without him. At one point, it leaned toward the mirror, its expression twisted into a malicious grin. Then, the video cut to static, the candle snuffed out in the dark. Chen Ge's mind raced. The reflection had wanted to break free. But it was the doll, his first creation, that had stopped it. Could it have saved him? Shaken, he cradled the doll, seeking answers. But the doll remained silent, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Then, the phone buzzed with a message, "Mission complete." A reward appeared on the screen, Mortician's Makeup, a skill meant for crafting beauty on the dead. With a new title and a new challenge unlocked, Chen Ge understood the importance of this skill for his haunted house. It was not just about scaring people, it was about breathing life into terror, crafting the perfect illusion. The game had given him a glimpse into a new world. And he was ready to dive deeper. Chapter 5. Chen Ge had returned from the nightmare mission with something far more useful than he'd anticipated, a new skill called Mortician's Makeup. It felt like a sign. Perhaps, in time, this would help him reach into that dark, otherworldly realm where his parents had vanished. But survival came first. His haunted house business teetered on the edge of collapse, and he needed to act fast. He uploaded the video of his experience to a well-known supernatural forum. It was raw and unsettling, showing flickering candlelight and a mirror slowly cracking. The footage was quickly titled "Who is that in the mirror?" and began to spread like wildfire. Viewers flooded the comment sections, some speculated about spiritual forces, others dismissed it as a hoax. But all were watching. Sensing the power of fear, Chen Ge trimmed the clip to the most disturbing 14 seconds, the moment when the mirror seemed to fracture by itself, and a dark shape lunged forward as if attempting to break through not just glass, but the screen itself. He uploaded the snippet to a national video sharing app, where the response was immediate. Unlike the supernatural forum users, most viewers there weren't seeking horror, they were caught off guard, and their panic exploded across the comment section. The internet backlash, intense and volatile, only amplified the video's reach. He altered his user profile with a deliberately ironic note, subtly promoting his haunted house. The viral momentum had drawn in hundreds of new followers, and along with them came messages filled with shock, threats, and disbelief. Chen Ge didn't bother responding. The fear was real, he had lived it. Their reactions only confirmed the video's effectiveness. As the night deepened, he remained seated by the window, watching the stream of comments flood in until sleep claimed him. He awoke the next morning, stiff and cold, sunlight casting long shadows across the floor. Stretching, he pocketed his phone and the small, unsettling doll that had stayed with him since the mission. The wooden door beside him was scratched, deep grooves at its base, silent proof that something had clawed at it during the night. Grateful he hadn't stepped outside when curiosity had tempted him, Chen Ge reminded himself that nightmare missions came with unseen dangers. He would need to stay cautious. But outside, something had changed. A crowd had formed at the gates of New Century Park. Word of the video had spread far and wide, and people were arriving, not just to see, but to experience the haunted house firsthand. As he checked his phone again, his follower count continued to rise. The comments were filled with fear and anger, many accusing him of orchestrating the scare. But it didn't matter. His haunted house was no longer obscure. The eerie spectacle had done its job. And now, with only minutes before the gates opened, Chen Ge braced himself. A storm of curious thrill-seekers was about to descend, and he would be the one welcoming them into the darkness. Chapter 6. Chen Ge stood alone inside his haunted house, reviewing his resources. With only 2 themes to offer, he knew Night of the Living Dead was riddled with flaws, it required more staff and lacked punch. Instead, he focused on Minghun, the marriage of the living and the dead. It was unsettling, immersive, and perfect. Today, he would apply a new skill granted by the mysterious black phone, mortician's makeup. Not just cosmetic, it was precise, clinical, almost surgical. His subject was Su Wan, one of his few helpers. In the dim makeup room, Chen Ge began. With calm, deliberate movements, he traced her skin, calling on knowledge that felt foreign: anatomy, tone, bone structure. This wasn't traditional beauty. It was restoration, like painting life back into something long gone. Su Wan sat still, confused by the sensation. The tools he mentioned, scalpels, formaldehyde, shavers, had no place in stage makeup. But Chen Ge was undeterred. With each brush stroke, her features changed. Not exaggerated or grotesque, but pale, delicate, and chillingly serene. She looked less like a performer and more like a painting of someone who had once lived. The mirror didn't lie. Beauty radiated, but so did stillness. Too much stillness. She stared at her reflection in awe and discomfort. There was elegance, yes, but it felt hollow, like something crafted for mourning. The more she admired it, the colder she felt. Chen Ge, unfazed, moved on. With time running short, he dashed upstairs, applying the same uncanny detail to the mannequins and puppets. Now, they seemed ready to move on their own, faces frozen in whispers of sorrow and longing. Outside, a commotion swelled. The video he had posted, just 14 seconds of supernatural terror, had spread like wildfire. But not everyone came for entertainment. Some arrived angry, shaken. Phones broken. Sleep lost. Pride wounded. Yet curiosity overpowered resentment. Chen Ge stepped to the entrance, straightening his uniform. He heard the murmurs, insults, threats, embarrassment-tinged fury. But he didn't flinch. Instead, he welcomed them. Half-price tickets. An apology framed as a challenge. Face your fears, or be consumed by them. Inside waited Minghun, death veiled in beauty, grief disguised as art. And at the heart of it all stood Chen Ge, calm and smiling. Chapter 7. The tension outside the haunted house simmered like a kettle about to boil. Visitors, unsettled by the terrifying viral video from the night before, argued with Chen Ge, demanding compensation. He offered discounted tickets, but none dared cross the gate, fear still held them hostage. That changed with the arrival of 2 unlikely guests. A pale, elegant woman in a white dress and sun hat stepped forward, the air seeming to chill around her. Gao Ru Shui, a forensic science student, carried the calm of someone who had stared death in the face. Her junior, He-san, followed eagerly, explaining how her experience in dissection labs and morgues made her immune to fear. The crowd, intimidated by her icy demeanor, stepped back. Chen Ge welcomed them cautiously, aware these were not ordinary visitors. Before guiding them in, he revealed the haunted house's dark history. Decades ago, the land was a mass grave. Later, a hospital rose atop it, only to be shuttered after mysterious and inexplicable occurrences. Now, this very structure served as his haunted attraction. The chosen experience was Minghun, a tale of an unwilling bride forced to wed the dead. In the legend, a grieving mother arranged a spirit wedding for her deceased son. The chosen girl was in love with another, but threats and violence forced her into compliance. On the day of the ceremony, red and white candles burned together, symbolizing love and mourning. She was buried alive in the coffin, and with her burial, the household fell into decay. Statues wept, paper dolls blinked, and the dead walked at midnight. Chen Ge opened the door to the scenario. The students had 15 minutes to find the exit or call for help. Without hesitation, Gao Rushui entered the darkness. He-san followed, though not without visible reluctance. With the heavy door locked behind them, Chen Ge gave orders to his staff and returned to his control room. The air was thick with anticipation as he activated the haunting Black Friday soundtrack. Now, with cameras fixed on the guests and every creak in the corridor amplified by eerie music, Chen Ge watched closely. These weren't just thrill-seekers, they were witnesses to what lay beneath the paint and props. And tonight, Minghun would show them that some stories refuse to stay buried. Chapter 8. Beneath the dim corridor lights of the haunted Minghun set, two forensic science students stepped into a replica of an old Beijing courtyard house. Gao Rushui, composed and analytical, admired the craftsmanship. The layered structures, the ear houses, the main hall, the winding corridors, were meticulous recreations. But her companion, He-san, could barely hide his anxiety. Every step echoed, every shadow seemed alive. Their time was limited, 15 minutes to find an exit, but Gao Rushui was more curious than cautious. She opened the first door to one of the servant quarters. The air shifted. Furniture was overturned. A white cloth hung from the ceiling, swaying gently in a still room. On the bed, shredded pillows scattered cotton through the air. She noted the deliberate setup, suggesting a staged hanging, but something felt off. Even the servants, it seemed, hadn't escaped the vengeance haunting this house. Beneath the sheets, she found a paper doll, oddly placed, unsettlingly lifelike. As she dismissed it and turned to leave, He-san, frozen in place, swore he saw the doll blink. Unease bloomed. Gao Rushui, known for her calm in the face of real death, felt her composure crack. The fear wasn't from the set itself, but from within. A quiet pressure pressed on them, subtle yet growing. It wasn't about jump scares, it was the dread of the unknown. The creeping thought that maybe something unseen was watching. And then there was the music. A low, looping melody, unnerving in its repetition. Neither of them could name it, but it burrowed into their thoughts, an almost inaudible whisper threading through the house. Black Friday, unknowingly playing in the background, had begun to stir something deeper, something emotional, something instinctive. The further they wandered, the more distorted time felt. Were the walls subtly shifting? Were they being led or lost? The haunted house was unlike others. No performers in costumes. No sudden frights. Just suggestion. The owner's quiet mention of mass graves and vanished hospitals had planted seeds. Their minds had done the rest. At last, they pushed open another door. Inside, the morning hall revealed itself. A red coffin sat in the center, adorned with white paper symbols of marriage and death. Dozens of paper mannequins stood guard, painted faces, hollow expressions, each with a name etched on their backs. Their unblinking eyes seemed to glow faintly, watching silently as the two visitors stood frozen in the doorway. No sound. No movement. only the feeling that the room itself was holding its breath, and that whatever was watching was now fully awake. Chapter 9. In the heart of the haunted Sihiyuan, Gao Rushui and He-san stood before a room filled with paper mannequins. Their painted faces, enhanced with mortuary makeup, seemed to observe them, lifeless yet uncannily vivid. He-san hesitated, his instincts screaming to flee, but Gao Rushui pressed forward, ever the rational investigator. The room was sealed. Decorative windows offered no escape. Yet something about this space felt important, deliberately constructed to test their nerves. Ignoring the unease clawing at her thoughts, Gao Rushui approached the red coffin in the room's center. Its surface was worn, but the oversized celebratory symbol on top seemed grotesquely out of place. Determined to uncover its secrets, she demanded He-san help her lift the lid. But before they could open it, a deep thud echoed from within. Fear surged, but Gao Rushui stayed composed. She reasoned aloud, perhaps a hidden mechanism or a planted scare tactic. Regardless, the coffin was key. With trembling hands, they opened it. Then chaos erupted. The coffin burst apart, spewing paper effigies and faux currency into the air. A distorted, feminine laugh echoed around them. At the same moment, the room's door began to shut. He-san panicked, sprinting for the exit. Just before he escaped, a pale face materialized before him, beautiful, expressionless, unnatural. He lashed out, but the figure evaded him effortlessly, vanishing into shadow. In terror, he bolted into the nearest room. Gao Rushui gave chase, only to find herself trapped as the door sealed behind her. She fought to open it, pounding until the wood relented. But once outside, the atmosphere had changed, quieter, colder, wrong. He-san had vanished. She followed the path he'd taken, arriving at a West House chamber now dressed in chilling contradiction, a wedding room clad entirely in white, the color of mourning. The faint light of a white lantern flickered at the doorway as she stepped inside, cold air trailing fingers across her skin. Paper offerings crunched beneath her feet. Every step felt like trespass. She called for him, but only silence and the rustling of ceremonial paper replied. Then, a sound. Footsteps. Not hers, another set, just behind her. She turned sharply, heart pounding. But there was no one there. Only her reflection, staring back from a bronze mirror. And something about its expression didn't match her own. Chapter 10. Inside the dimly lit room, Gao Rushui struggled to steady her breath. The silence was deceptive, eerie music hummed through the walls, and her reflection in the mirror seemed off. As she stared closer, the image shifted. Behind her, the mosquito net had parted on its own. A paper mannequin peered out, its painted smile chillingly vivid. Spinning around, she found nothing. But fear clung to her like mist. Determined to uncover the truth, she lunged toward the net, but the layered fabric tangled around her limbs like a web. Her heart pounded as footsteps echoed softly across the wooden floorboards. But she wasn't moving. So, who was? Frozen in fear, her mind unraveled. She pulled desperately at the netting as the sound grew louder. Her eyes flicked back to the mirror, and her reflection was no longer her own. A woman stood in her place, dressed in a faded wedding gown, her face hauntingly beautiful, her expression deathly serene. Gao Rushui knew that look. As a forensic student, she'd seen it often. This was the face of someone no longer living. Panic erupted. She stumbled backward, colliding with something solid. Her thoughts blanked until she turned and saw her. The woman from the mirror, now real and inches away, smiled. The scream that tore through the house shattered the illusion. It wasn't an apparition, it was a performer. The act ended. The fear, however, lingered. Gao Rushui, trembling and tear-streaked, was escorted out. Elsewhere, He-san had been found unconscious, collapsed from sheer terror upon encountering twin mirrors and a disembodied voice calling his name. Chen Ge dragged him out from beneath a bed, still unresponsive. Once outside, with crowds gathering and the summer heat pressing in, he finally stirred. His voice barely a whisper, he repeated one thing. Mirror, mirror. Visitors watched, stunned. Two forensic students, broken by a simulated scenario. Even the park's manager was at a loss. The scenario had gone too far, perhaps too real. As He-san regained clarity, he recalled little. A mirror. A voice. Then, nothing. Maybe it was all part of the show, or maybe, just maybe, something inside that room wasn't part of the act at all. Chapter 11. The name Mirror alone was enough to stir unease in Chen Ge. When He-san mumbled it, everything clicked. That chilling game from the night before, something within the mirror had almost escaped, only to be stopped by a doll. But now, that thing might still be inside, lurking in the haunted house's mirrors. He couldn't reveal the truth, of course. Saying a real entity was haunting the place would not only shut his business down, it might land him in a mental hospital. So, Chen Ge played it off. He told the crowd the scare was part of a new, exclusive experience, one not recommended without guidance. But no one bought it. The fear was still raw on everyone's face. Two forensic students had entered, people used to unsettling sights. One had fainted, the other left sobbing. Whatever they encountered had shaken them to the core. No explanation could wipe that away. Just as the crowd was turning to leave, laughter erupted, not from amusement, but disbelief, as a balding middle-aged man boldly stepped forward. He bought a ticket, walked a few steps away, and snapped a photo of the haunted house. Not to enter, but to post. In seconds, the post went viral. His friends teased him, his daughter laughed, and his wife reminded him to come home for dinner. But beneath the jokes was a challenge. If he could do it, why couldn't they? One by one, phones were raised, photos were posted, and people who had sworn off entering returned for tickets. The fear became a badge of honor. Despite the horror, curiosity won. Business boomed. Chen Ge could hardly believe it. As he counted cash, he realized the day's sales had already surpassed the entire month. But amidst the success, the victims of that terrifying scene, He-san and Gaoru Shui, still hadn't left. They sat quietly near the entrance, pale and shaken. Chen Ge approached with bottled water, his tone now more gentle. These two had unintentionally triggered the morning's success. He-san was recovering, but Gaoru Shui remained stiff. Her eyes shifted between Chen Ge and Su-won, the actress who had played the ghost. Haunted by what she'd seen, Gaoru Shui sought clarity. She had seen Su-won's reflection in the mirror, then felt her appear behind her. Chen Ge explained the trick, a mirrored triangular pillar, hidden angles, lighting illusions, and precise sound effects. A carefully designed illusion. But Gaoru Shui's fear remained. There was something deeper. Despite knowing Su-won was alive, something in her presence had felt wrong. Like the weight of something lifeless wrapped in skin. Something still, beneath the surface. And though the explanation made sense, the unease refused to fade. Somewhere inside the haunted house, behind the mirrors, something still waited. Something that wasn't entirely part of the act. Chapter 12. Despite her familiarity with unsettling environments, Gaoru Shui couldn't shake what she'd experienced in the haunted house. As a forensic student, she was more at ease among the lifeless than the living, but even she felt something wasn't right. Chen Ge, hiding the full truth, offered vague reassurances before returning to the control room. What happened to He-san wasn't a simple scare. The presence behind the mirror hadn't left, it lingered in silence, biding its time. Reviewing surveillance footage, Chen Ge discovered something deeply troubling. At precisely 9 hours 24 minutes and 11 seconds, He-san ran into the West House in a panic. But 3 seconds later, when he looked at the bronze mirror, he froze. Inhumanly still, as though held by something unseen. At 9 hours 24 minutes and 17 seconds, he lifted his left hand, odd, considering he was right-handed, and began moving toward the mirror, as though pulled. Just as his upper body neared the glass, Suwon appeared in her costume, rushing in. At that moment, a flicker appeared in the mirror, barely perceptible. He-san collapsed. The arrival of Suwon had interrupted something that had been reaching through the mirror. Chen Ge rewatched the footage over and over. No answers came, only a single grim conclusion: the entity within the mirror hadn't finished what it started. Until he could deal with it properly, all mirrors had to be sealed. He gathered black cloth and methodically began covering each reflective surface. He instructed Suwon to avoid using mirror-related scares entirely and to keep her distance from them during work. She didn't question him. Later, standing alone before the same mirror, Chen Ge studied his reflection. Something was off. When He-san took the water bottle earlier, he used his right hand, his dominant one. But in the footage, he reached with his left. The mirror hadn't just shown a reflection. It had influenced him, inverted him, possibly even taken partial control. Placing his hand against the cold glass, Chen Ge felt a strange tension, as though the surface was too still. Too silent. He covered the mirror, then opened the cursed black phone, the source of all of this. A new trial mission had appeared, a deranged presence prowling a crumbling apartment complex, hidden among the innocent. The instructions were clear: reach the location before midnight, uncover the truth, survive the night. And there was more. A new feature, the Wheel of Misfortune, had quietly activated. It promised powerful rewards or dreadful consequences, spun using the collected screams of visitors. A free spin was granted. Chen Ge stared at the glowing screen. It beckoned. What could possibly go wrong? With a hesitant touch, the wheel began to turn, its sections blurring in motion. Somewhere on that wheel waited either salvation, or something far worse. And the mirror behind him remained covered, but not quiet. Chapter 13. Inside the dim control room of a haunted house, Chen Ge spun the Wheel of Misfortune, a gamble masked as opportunity. As it slowed to a stop, the screen flickered. Congratulations. Rare special item, cursed love letter. A 3 in 1,000 chance. The screen described a girl who became a taboo after a fatal fall. Dressed in red shoes and a uniform stained with unspeakable sorrow, even her name had been forgotten, until someone began receiving her letters again. With the item came a new title, The Spectre's Favored. It promised occasional help from those who had never truly left. Still stunned, Chen Ge felt a papery weight in his pocket. He reached in, and pulled out an aged letter. The message was simple, yet unsettling: I like you. Braided entirely with strands of hair. His haunted house, already cursed by a mirror-dwelling presence, now bore another haunting. Trying to regain composure, Chen Ge wandered through the haunted corridors. But then, shadows twisted behind him, two where there should have been one. They merged, silently, ominously. He fled into daylight, the touch of sun his only reassurance. Outside, he feigned normalcy, brushing off concern from his assistant. Yet his mind replayed what he'd seen. Was something hiding in his shadow now? The title suggested favor, but favor from what? Later, he sat under the open sky, trying to act like the weight on his shoulders was mere stress. In truth, he feared what followed him. That night, alone again, he returned to the letter. Its presence felt heavier than paper. The specter, if it lingered, offered uncertain allegiance. Such entities, born from pain and vengeance, offered help only on their terms. A misstep could lead to consequences far beyond fright. Still, Chen Ge pressed forward. The trial mission loomed. One chance only. Fail, and the haunted scenario tied to it would be locked forever. He began his research. The target, Ping'an apartments on the city's western outskirts. Online searches yielded little, until he found a buried complaint. Someone had tried to sell a unit there. After stripping fresh paint, the buyer discovered faded crimson smears and a rot-like stench that clung to the night. No replies. Just silence and abandonment. Now Chen Ge had to stay there overnight. Not just survive, but uncover a hidden killer. It wasn't the ghosts that unnerved him most, it was the thought of a real person, twisted, waiting in the dark. The lines between games and reality were gone. What had started as a haunted attraction now beckoned him into something far deeper. The specter's love letter was only the beginning. Chapter 14. As dusk settled, Chen Ge prepared for something most would never attempt, an overnight stay in a place tied to a murderer. He gathered essentials, tools, ID, phone, and the doll that had appeared by the mirror the night before. He wasn't sure why, but instinct told him to bring it. Leaving his haunted house behind, he pedaled out toward Ping'an Apartments, guided only by vague online complaints and a fading address. The journey took hours. The building lay hidden beyond overgrown trails and winding paths, rarely spoken of even by locals. When he finally arrived, the gray building loomed behind cracked walls and a rusted iron gate. But something was off. The gate had a new lock, too new for the setting. And stuck to the iron bars was a sheet of paper, a missing persons notice. A 27-year-old woman, last seen in red clothing, living at this very address. Chen Ge snapped a photo. The warning signs were piling up, but the mission from the black phone left no room for hesitation. Inside, the compound was unexpectedly clean. Freshly cut grass. No trash. Yet the building's age seeped from its walls. He entered the dim corridor. A woman, bloodshot-eyed and gaunt, peeked through a barely opened door. She said nothing, only giggled, and closed it just as quickly. Soon after, a limping man descended the stairs. He called himself the landlord and agreed to let Chen Ge stay for a night. Before they could head upstairs to sort payment, the gate outside clanged open. Another visitor. A haggard man entered, his clothes worn, his hands gripping a stack of papers. The landlord snapped, accusing him of returning again and again to search for a woman who wasn't there. The man said nothing, even when shoved hard into the wall, scattering his papers. Chen Ge picked one up. It was identical to the missing persons notice outside. The silent man gathered the sheets like a ghost going through the motions of grief. The landlord waved off the scene, called that man is crazy. But Chen Ge wasn't so sure. His mission involved a hidden threat, someone dangerous. And sometimes, madness and warning were the same face. He glanced once more at the man as they passed on the stairs. Something about his silence, the weight in his eyes, whispered truths no one wanted to hear. The building was quiet again. But for Chen Ge, the night had only just begun. Chapter 15. Chen Ge watched the weary man, Wang Qi, shuffle past him, clutching missing person notices with trembling hands. His voice, when he softly thanked Chen Ge, was thin and gravelly, like someone drained of life. There was something unsettling in how hollow he seemed, as though grief had hollowed him out from the inside. Leaving the man behind, Chen Ge followed the limping landlord up the creaking stairs to the second floor. At the end of the corridor, the landlord offered a room for $50. Strangely, only the second floor was available. The others? Off limits. No explanation. No questions allowed. Chen Ge was handed a key, room 208, right next to the landlord's. When Chen Ge entered, he was greeted by the thick scent of mildew. The bed was coated with something soft and organic, moss or fungus, unnatural to the touch. But before he could settle in, a sharp crash erupted through the wall. He leaned close, listening. The landlord's voice exploded in anger. A frail, mumbling reply followed, likely from the old man in the wheelchair Chen Ge had seen earlier. Then, the television was cranked up loud, smothering the noise. With suspicion mounting, Chen Ge took out his tools, scanning the room with careful knocks and taps. The room, though worn, revealed no secrets. But the deeper mystery lingered. Why lock guests to the second floor? What's being hidden above, or below? 3 hours remained until the Black Phone's mission began. Planning a quiet exploration, Chen Ge stepped toward the door, but froze. On the other side, the landlord was standing silently. Neither of them expected the encounter, and both flinched. The man, suddenly all smiles, offered Chen Ge a bottle of water, claiming it was because he'd mentioned being thirsty. His expression didn't match his words. He warned Chen Ge to stay inside after sunset. The corridor lights, he said, didn't work. When the door finally shut again, Chen Ge's mind raced. The man was volatile, strong, despite his limp, and socially off. He had full access to the entire floor. If he truly was dangerous, then Chen Ge was sleeping right next to the threat. And worse, there'd be nothing stopping the landlord from entering at night. This wasn't just a rundown building. This place was hiding something. And someone might be watching from the other side of the wall. Chapter 16. Chen Ge couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong with the apartment. The landlord was suspicious, but suspicion alone wasn't proof. He needed answers. Out of the strange people he had seen, an old man in a wheelchair, a woman hiding behind her door, and the irritable landlord, only one seemed approachable, Wang Qi, the man handing out missing person notices. Chen Ge followed him quietly through the dim corridor, watching as he slipped a flyer under each door. Why would someone post missing notices here, in such an empty, forgotten place? Approaching him, Chen Ge shared his own story, how his parents had vanished without a trace half a year ago. Wang Qi's guarded demeanor softened. Their pain echoed one another. But his advice was chilling: leave this place now, don't spend a single night here. Wang Qi finally spoke of the building's past. It was once called Fuan Apartments, until a series of unsolved murders stained its reputation. Afterward, it was quietly renamed Ping'an Apartments, as if a new name could erase old horrors. According to Wang Qi, the dead still wandered these halls at midnight, returning to the place where their lives ended. He wasn't always a believer. Until the day his fiancée vanished without a word, her trail ending inside this building. That's when the impossible began. Every night at 2 a.m., his phone received a message. Always the same 2 words: save me. Each morning, the message vanished, leaving no trace behind. To keep one as proof, he had stayed awake for 24 hours straight. The message was still on his screen. And then there were the objects, his fiancée's belongings appearing inside his locked room, as if placed there by invisible hands. A hair clip. A scarf. Personal things no one else should have. Wang Qi's voice trembled. He was certain his fiancée hadn't simply disappeared. She was trapped somewhere close. Maybe not alive, but definitely not gone. Then came the most terrifying part. He leaned in and revealed what he truly believed: the people in this building, some of them weren't people at all. They were part of something else. He was convinced his fiancée had been taken by them. Chen Ge froze. The landlord. The silent woman. The oddly placed wheelchair. None of it felt right. All of it, together, made a kind of terrible sense. Wang Qi's final plea was simple: leave. Leave before nightfall. Don't try to stay the night. But for Chen Ge, there was no turning back. His mission, his only chance to uncover the truth behind this cursed place, would begin at midnight. The clock was ticking. And the building was already watching. Chapter 17. Wang Qi's final warning echoed ominously. When the clock struck 12, the apartment would become something else. He vanished into the night, leaving Chen Ge unsettled. Despite Wang Qi's grief-stricken demeanor, something didn't add up. His cloudy eyes had never once met Chen Ge's directly. There was sorrow in them, but perhaps also guilt. Returning upstairs, Chen Ge paused outside the woman's room on the first floor, hoping for answers. But before he could knock, a different door creaked open. From inside, a lanky, unkempt man emerged. His beard nearly merged with his hair, and a peony tattoo marked the back of his hand. He claimed Wang Qi wasn't even a tenant, just someone disturbed, clinging to a delusion about a missing fiancée. No police had ever been seen at the building. The man didn't seem trustworthy either, but unlike others in the apartment, his demeanor felt oddly normal. Chen Ge now had two conflicting stories and no way to know who, if either, was telling the truth. He climbed the stairs and unknowingly reached the third floor. The faded floor number barely clung to the cracked wall. A flickering voice-activated light struggled overhead. The entire corridor was in decay, grime-covered floorboards, burn marks, and walls shedding their outer layer like peeling skin, revealing what resembled thick wounds underneath. Why had this floor been left unrepaired? Was it neglect or something worse? The light clicked off, submerging Chen Ge in darkness. He wasn't afraid. Years working at a haunted attraction had made him comfortable in such shadows. Just as he reached for his phone flashlight, a shadow dashed across the hallway. Quick, quiet, and gone. He was about to investigate when footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Fearing a run-in with the short-tempered landlord, Chen Ge slipped back down to the second floor. As he rounded the corner, he spotted a short, round man emerging from a room, humming. When their eyes met, the man's cheer vanished. He dropped his basin and ran. Back in his room, Chen Ge lay on his bed, hugging his backpack. Everyone in this building felt wrong. Then a realization struck. His mission asked him to find the party responsible. That could mean more than one person. If there were multiple victims, maybe there were multiple perpetrators. Pulling out his phone, he typed the original name of the building, Fuan Apartments, into the search bar. The screen filled with chilling headlines. A family of 4, once the building's caretakers, had perished in a fire 5 years ago. Investigators had found their charred bodies among the ruins. Signs pointed to arson. Multiple fire sources were discovered, scattered far apart, suggesting careful planning. But no fifth person was ever identified. The fire had destroyed nearly all evidence. The case went cold. After a year of being sealed, the property passed to the owner's father. Then, the name was changed to Ping'an Apartments. But no amount of paint could cover what had happened here. Now, Chen Ge understood. This wasn't folklore. It wasn't superstition. He was living inside a real, unsolved crime scene. And midnight was coming. Chapter 18. Chen Ge was growing more suspicious by the minute. The landlord, a man who appeared middle-aged, didn't fit the description of the old man reported to own the building. But the more he listened, the more the situation didn't add up. The television blared through the thin walls. Normally, a commercial wouldn't last this long, but the static sound lingered, almost intentionally. Leaning closer to the wall, Chen Ge tried to make sense of the noise. It wasn't just the TV. The sound of a plate shattering earlier and the landlord's angered voice had piqued his curiosity. Could the old man next door be calling for help? The way the landlord had cursed, foreign curses, was even more troubling. He wasn't local, and his strange behavior suggested something darker. It dawned on Chen Ge, the landlord might not just be a caretaker. He could be the murderer. Either that, or he was involved in some kind of captive situation. But without proof, rushing in blindly could be fatal. Instead, Chen Ge decided to stay cautious and observe further. Suddenly, the TV was switched off, and the silence was oppressive. The landlord's room had gone dark at 8 p.m. What was going on? Chen Ge crouched at the door, holding a mallet, carefully checking the hallway to avoid drawing attention. After a tense moment, he retreated back into his room, his mind still racing. He realized he needed help. But who could he trust? The only person with any investigative skills was He-san, a medical student who'd previously fainted at his haunted house. Quickly, Chen Ge scrolled through his phone's messages, hoping to find He-san's contact. Amid the private messages, a studio's offer to collaborate stood out. They'd seen his recent video and promised exposure, but Chen Ge was far too distracted to entertain business talks. He rejected their offer politely and returned to his search. Minutes later, He-san's name appeared. He quickly sent a message, explaining the strange happenings next door. As he typed, the studio sent another message, offering more lucrative terms, but Chen Ge, growing irritated, blacklisted them. Finally, He-san responded. He had been waiting for Chen Ge's next video. But this wasn't about videos. Chen Ge needed advice, so he picked up the phone and called He-san. In a hurried, quiet whisper, he explained everything: the landlord's strange behavior, the ominous silence, and his growing fear that something terrible was unfolding in the building. Chapter 19. The air inside the apartment was unnervingly still as Chen Ge whispered over the phone. His voice was low, not out of fear, but strategy. Just beyond the thin wall was the landlord, who might have been the killer in an unresolved case involving a family burned alive. On the other end, He-san, a rural medical student new to city life, was overwhelmed. Chen Ge's calm recounting of his grim surroundings and suspicions clashed with He-san's comfortable reality, wrapped in blankets, eating fast food, watching videos. He-san urged him to call the authorities, but Chen Ge couldn't risk interference. This was no ordinary ghost hunt, it was a mission from the Black Phone, and it required him to stay overnight. Calling the police might disrupt the mission and cost him the reward. As an alternative, He-san suggested turning on GPS triangulation and leaving the phone active all night. That way, if something happened, he could notify the authorities immediately. Chen Ge agreed, but then had a better idea. Why not live stream the experience? His short video from the night before had already brought in 1,000 new followers and boosted foot traffic at his haunted house. A live stream could do more than ensure his safety, it could build his brand. He prepared everything carefully: GPS tracking on, emergency number preset, and the live stream title crafted to stand out. Overnight at a haunted apartment. Host faces the unknown. The moment the stream launched, notifications spread. Viewers trickled in, amused, skeptical, curious. Some mocked him, others threw jokes about his mental state, but many stayed. Unlike other content creators who staged scares and scripted drama, Chen Ge's material was real, and people could sense it. He addressed the viewers seriously. The bizarre event from last night wasn't a prank. The mirror incident was real. His voice didn't waver as he promised to reveal the hidden layers of the world, if they were willing to watch. The chat flooded with jokes and disbelief, but Chen Ge wasn't rattled. He knew once the truth started to show, everything would change. As night deepened outside the windows and silence settled over the haunted building, Chen Ge lit a cigarette. Shadows shifted, and an oppressive cold crept into the corners of the room. With a steady voice, he began to tell his viewers the bloody history of Fuan Apartments, once the scene of a fire that killed an entire family. The culprit was never caught, and the place had since been renamed and reopened. Every detail he spoke, every timeline, every eerie coincidence, was real. As the viewership climbed and chatter turned quiet, the line between horror story and reality blurred. Chen Ge wasn't performing. He was documenting survival in a place where the past still lingered, and something unseen might be watching. Chapter 20. The night was thick with tension as Chen Ge's livestream flickered on, casting an eerie glow in the dimly lit room of Fuan Apartments. His viewers were skeptical, dismissing his story as nothing more than a tall tale. But Chen Ge wasn't just spinning a yarn, he had uncovered something chilling. A fire, a vanished killer, and a building steeped in mystery. The apartment complex had a dark history, its walls scorched by the flames that claimed the lives of a family years ago. Yet something was off about the place, every tenant seemed strange, and Chen Ge suspected the murderer was hiding in plain sight. He presented his findings, showing his viewers the undeniable evidence. Beneath a fresh coat of paint, the wall was scorched black, the remnants of the fire still visible. The chat exploded with disbelief and mockery, but the proof was irrefutable. The fire had begun here, and Chen Ge had a theory: one of these tenants was the killer, disguised and waiting for the right moment. He introduced them to his audience: the mentally unstable woman who smiled wickedly, the tattooed man on the first floor, the limp landlord, and others, each more suspicious than the last. But the most unnerving theory came from his viewers: the old man in the wheelchair, who could have faked his disability. His involvement seemed plausible. After all, the fire didn't require strength, just the right timing. Despite the mockery, Chen Ge pressed on, determined to solve this twisted mystery. He explained that parts of the third floor had been left untouched, frozen in time as they were 4 years ago. It was there, he believed, that the key to solving the case lay. The fire's origin had to be somewhere on this floor. Chen Ge grabbed his flashlight and moved toward the third floor, every step echoing through the silent halls. The walls grew darker as he climbed, and a foul, unidentifiable smell filled the air. A shadow, a fleeting figure, caught his eye. Was it a ghost or a man? His heart raced, but he pressed on, knowing he was close. The third floor revealed its dark secrets. The walls were scarred with deep, jagged marks, the remnants of the fire's violent rage. Chen Ge moved cautiously through the long corridor, the temperature dropping as he ventured deeper. The doors were warped, the rooms destroyed, yet something about the scene felt preserved, as though time had stood still. Chen Ge's hand tightened around his mallet. The killer had to have known this place, had to have been here, carefully orchestrating the destruction. But why was the third floor left untouched? Could it be that the killer never came up here, leaving these signs as a twisted clue? The chill in the air prickled his skin as he navigated the wreckage, stepping carefully over debris. Each creaking floorboard made his nerves flare. He needed to find something, anything, to confirm his suspicions. The deeper he went, the darker it became. The answers were hidden here, and Chen Ge was determined to uncover them.